Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the What If. Chapter 25. Plans in Motion. The sound of wet feet smacking against the tiled floor made Naruto sit up, arms flailing. He must have dozed off, the soothing trickle of the shower acting like a lullaby. Rubbing out the grit in his eyes, Naruto turned his attention to the bathroom door after hearing it creak open. Kurenai stepped out and Naruto couldn't help but stare at her and marvel at how tightly her clothing clung to her body. Her red tank top exposed a generous amount of her cleavage and her black shorts were cut off at mid-thigh. It was like she chose that outfit specifically to appeal to him. Naruto knew that she knew that he was taking in the sight, eyes roving across her body hungrily. She didn't reprimand him, like he expected she would. All she did was sit on her bed and place the towel draped along her shoulders on her head, rubbing her hair with it. She wasn't facing him, letting him see the flawless, creamy skin of her back and shoulders. Once she finished, she looked behind her shoulder. The corners of her mouth twitched upwards. "What are you waiting for? You're free to take a shower, Naruto." Naruto blinked once, then blinked again. Taking a deep breath, he looked past Kurenai and forced the heat creeping into his face to dissipate. "Yeah, sure." He went to the bathroom and took a cold shower to cool down. He still wanted to find out what Kurenai's problem with him was, and lusting over her body was just going to distract him. Once he felt the cold shower do its work, he turned the knobs and made the water hot, basking in the warm water and feeling all his muscles relax. Turning off the water, Naruto dried himself off and put on his pajamas. The room was dark when he left the bathroom, with the only light coming from outside. Kurenai was sleeping, her chest rising and falling in an even rhythm. He went to bed and closed his eyes, trying to go to sleep. But try as he might, he couldn't sleep peacefully. He tossed and turned, head throbbing from all the tension he was feeling. Not only that, he didn't feel any sort of fatigue whatsoever. Since he was awake, he sat up and stared at the source of all his current anxiety. Wondering about the reason why Kurenai was irritated with him was something that gnawed at him, something that he couldn't stop focusing on. It started after the hidden cloud ninja left them, after Yugito kissed him. His eyes lit up. Maybe that was it. He couldn't see why that was a problem, since it was only a goodbye kiss and one that didn't even last that long. Or maybe it was something else. Either way, there was no use mulling over possible reasons for Kurenai's behavior. "Kurenai," he whispered, wanting to know if she was awake. She was, as one eye opened. It was fortunate that she was facing him as she slept, instead of turning her back to him. "What is it?" Naruto wilted slightly from the snappish tone in her voice, but soldiered on. There wasn't any reason for him to back down. None at all, and Kurenai was the one that said honesty was an important part of any relationship. "Why were you so angry yesterday?" Kurenai lifted herself up and made eye contact. Her posture was somewhat rigid and Naruto saw a hint of pink lining the bridge of her nose. "It was bothering you, wasn't it?" Naruto nodded. Kurenai's breath had an unfamiliar, pungent smell to it. "I don't know what I did wrong." Kurenai smiled and put a hand on his knee. "You didn't do anything wrong." Naruto frowned, clenching his teeth. "Then why were you so annoyed, huh?" He saw Kurenai flinch from how he had nearly shouted the question. "I was stressed out. Something about the Cloud Ninja annoyed me and I didn't realize how badly my mood was affected until later. I can't tell you what it was that set me off because I'm not sure what it was myself." Naruto sighed. Something that wasn't the Nine Tails was telling him that Kurenai was leaving some parts of the story out, but it would have to do. She clearly didn't want to have the discussion and he knew a lost cause when he saw one. "Fine." Kurenai gave him a parting smile before laying down on her bed once again. "I didn't mean to stress you out." She closed her eyes and didn't say another word. Naruto lay on his bed and thought. He'd try to get some rest, try to focus on the mission when he woke up and asked Kurenai again when they were finished, or wait until she was ready to tell him. He already spent too much time thinking about his girlfriend in a negative light. More than enough time, in fact. Fortunately, Naruto was able to fall asleep by meditating for a few minutes to calm himself down. While he was busy with that, he took the time to examine his chakra supplies and smiled after seeing how much yin chakra he had. It was only a matter of time until his yin and yang chakra were completely balanced. When he woke up the next day, he got out of bed with a smile on his face, stretching and feeling his joints pop. His headache was all but gone and he had managed to salvage some rest last night, so now he was more than ready to tackle any mission planning he needed to do. The moment Kurenai left the bathroom, he entered without sparing her a passing glance and got to work, combing his hair, washing his face and brushing his teeth before dressing up in his ninja gear. He walked out and saw Kurenai sitting on her bed in her usual outfit, a genuine smile on her face. "Someone's energetic," she said. "Did you get a good night's rest?" Naruto nodded. "Excellent." Before he could respond, he heard a knock on the door and quickly scanned the people behind it with his sensor. "It's open." Enko and Yugao entered and after they exchanged greetings, they made their way towards a table that had been set up between the two beds. Once everyone found a place to sit, Enko pulled out a scroll from her jacket pocket and rolled it on the table, revealing a map with some writing scribbled here and there, among other markings. "I gathered some intel on the Crimson Hand last night. It really bothers me if I don't know what I'm getting into." From the tone of her voice, Enko was all business as she went on to reveal that the Crimson Hand was divided into 3 encampments, with the largest and most fortified of them also being the one that housed the Crimson Hand's leader. Contrary to what the mission intel had stated, there were a few ninja among the Crimson Hand. "So, what do you think, leader?" Enko asked after she finished giving her information. Naruto looked at the map and began to think, taking Enko's intel and the numbers that represented the amount of bandits in each camp, written around the encampments, locations into account. This was the first time he was really planning anything like this. The bridge defense plan back in Wave was handled by Kakashi and the Anbu squad, and Sakura primarily took the initiative in the Forest of Death. He wasn't as smart as Kakashi or Sakura, but he knew that the best thing he could do was put his best foot forward. "The first thing we should do is spread some chaos." "Why?" Enko asked. "Because once we do that, they'll call in reinforcements," Naruto replied. "And how are you gonna do that?" "My shadow clones," Naruto said, his smile slowly becoming a strained one. "While the bandits are dealing with them, I want you 3 to be positioned at each camp and see how many bandits leave and check if the ninja leave with them or stay behind. Once that's done, I'll have my clones disappear." Naruto raised a hand to silence Enko before she could speak, which made her raise an eyebrow in response. He then returned to the map. "The point is that once we figure out the bandits' movements, we can set up traps to catch them out. Then when we attack each camp for real, we'll have to deal with fewer bandits in total. But then we lose the element of surprise," Enko said. "Why warn them? We can't just rush in," Naruto replied, not annoyed by hearing what was a valid question instead of Enko being irritating. "Even if one of us can take down a single camp full of bandits by ourselves, we'll be swarmed by reinforcements and unable to cope. And even then, we would have to attack the main camp and that would make this plan of mine even riskier than it already is." Enko didn't respond immediately, but when she did, she smiled in approval. "Not bad. I agree," Kurenai said. "So do I," Yugao agreed. Naruto smiled at the praise, surprised that his plan was having such a positive response. "I want to leave the biggest camp for last, because it'll still be the most heavily fortified camp even after thinning out the ranks." Yugao nodded in agreement. "When do you want to attack?" Naruto frowned. "I'm not sure." "Enko, when do you think we should attack?" Enko smirked. "Good move, asking me for advice. Anyway, we should attack them at sunset, and figure out their patrols and deployments in the morning." Naruto wondered if he should disagree with Enko just to spite her, but he couldn't really see any issue with her plan that would give him a legitimate reason to do so. "What do you guys think?" "I think Enko's plan is the best course of action," Kurenai said. Yugao didn't seem like she agreed, with a slight frown on her face. "I think we should switch the times around. Twilight for the recon and daybreak for the attack. Our targets will be tired and more susceptible to making mistakes, so disposing of them should be easier." Kurenai and Enko seemed to approve of Yugao's plan. Naruto wasn't sure. "We'll run into tired opponents during sunset too, especially if the camp is run throughout the day. If we set traps, I think that it's more likely that the bandits will set off the traps when there's less light, the same reason why it'll be easier for us to retreat." Instead of being put off, Yugao only smiled. Insightful as always. So I assume we'll be doing recon in the morning and attack at night. Naruto nodded. Yeah, it's for the best. Sorry. Yugao waved him off. You're the leader and I'm fully capable of accepting that my ideas might not be the most viable ones. Never apologize for that, otherwise you might have to deal with a teammate who'll try to manipulate you into doing what they want. Really? Naruto asked, eyes going as wide as they possibly could. He never experienced any serious problems with teamwork, even when he was a part of Team 7. Yeah, Anko said with a grin. You'll get all kinds of assholes wanting to push you around and make your life miserable just because they don't like you or they're jealous that you're the leader, even though you're a snot-nosed, immature kid with stupid whisker marks. Naruto looked Anko right in the eye and saw how wide her grin had become. You mean like you? Anko gasped. Me? How could you accuse me of something so deplorable? She started to laugh hysterically, before coming to a halt some time after. Nah, I'm not like that. Naruto took in a deep breath and ignored the oncoming headache that had come from hearing Anko's hypocrisy. It seemed Kurenai was feeling the same, pinching the bridge of her nose in exasperation. Yugao only shook her head. Never mind. I think we should start the mission properly tomorrow morning. What do you say? Everyone, even Anko, agreed. Hours after the mission plan had ended, Naruto was walking alone in the town's streets. Kurenai and the other kunoichi had decided to check out what the shops of this small town had to offer. He had wanted to spend time with Kurenai, but not only did he find shopping boring when he wasn't buying anything necessary, Jiraiya had warned him on more than one occasion to not get in the way of a woman shopping. So he made up an excuse and said he wanted to do some searching of his own. They bought it and Naruto left. He wondered if they were buying new clothing, and imagined Kurenai trying on different outfits. Outfits that flaunted her virtually flawless figure, like that tank top and shorts she wore last night, or the black dress she wore on their first date. She also had jewelry on, a necklace and earrings. Now that he thought about it, he hadn't seen Kurenai wear any jewelry beyond those two pieces. He didn't see much, if any other, jewelry around her apartment either. So for the next few minutes, Naruto searched for a jewelry store while making sure that the others, especially Kurenai, didn't catch on to what he was doing. He hoped that Kurenai would appreciate the gift. Even if she didn't, he still wanted to give her something to show his gratitude for her choosing him to be her boyfriend. The glint of silver and gold trinkets shining from the display of a corner shop caught his eye and he smiled, hearing a bell jingle as he stepped inside. He had thought about what kind of jewelry he wanted to buy Kurenai, and while he wasn't sure, he knew to look for the small details. Just after he entered the jewelry store, an elderly woman appeared from the back of the shop. Her skin was sagging in places and her hair was a silvery gray, but her eyes were a sharp brown and shone with the experience and wisdom of someone who lived to tell a long tale. Her lip curled in what must have been distaste, since Naruto couldn't fathom a reason why she would do that otherwise. What is a ninja as young as you doing in a place like this? I want to buy something for my girlfriend, Naruto replied. The woman moved to the counter before staring right at him, possibly right through him. Is that right? Are you sure you're not here to cause mischief? Naruto shook his head. There was absolutely no point of doing that. Never. The woman's sharp gaze softened, a smile cracking on her lips and her posture becoming less crooked and more inviting. In that case, what can I get for that girl of yours? She pursed her lips after seeing Naruto look at her with a wary glance, having not moved a single step. A harsh sound shocked Naruto and the woman retracted her hand, having snapped her fingers to get his attention. Come now, child, you need to communicate if you want me to help you. Naruto blinked before moving towards the counter. Admittedly, the woman's change in mood threw him for a loop, but now that she was more agreeable than before, he was sure he wouldn't come across any problems whatsoever. He looked around and saw rings of all kinds sitting in glass cases. He knew that they were used for marriage proposals, so they were out. Kurenai already had a pair of earrings and he didn't know enough of them to buy a set anyways. He had began to idly drum the glass case while searching the store for what he wanted. It was seeing the bright olive bracelet on his wrist that gave him an idea. Shikamaru gave it to him after the exams had ended and he knew it would always be there. All he had to do was look at it if he wanted to be reminded of his bond with his best male friend. That was it. The old woman seemed to notice the gleam in Naruto's eyes as a soft chuckle escaped her. Call it a hunch, call it woman's intuition, but I've been doing this for long enough that I can immediately tell you know what you want to buy. I want a bracelet, a simple one that can endure a ninja's life. One with yellow and red gemstones, and with her name engraved on it. Anything else? Naruto kept quiet for a few moments, wondering if he wanted to add anything else. He shook his head after. The woman went to go and pick out a few bracelets from her inventory, choosing two to present to him. One had more intricate detail, with flowers engraved on the links of the bracelet. The other one was plain in comparison, but was also cheaper. Both were apparently capable of withstanding a blow from many things, but he was warned that a blade enhanced by chakra wielded by an experienced practitioner of kenjutsu or an equivalent attacking method would be enough to destroy the bracelet. The more expensive bracelet was within his price range, so he chose that one. The woman smiled in response. You'll have to come back tomorrow. I'll have your order done by then. I just need her name. Naruto smiled. It wouldn't do him any harm to tell this old woman his girlfriend's name, if only because she wasn't a part of the Hidden Leaf Village. Kurenai. Well, Kurenai is a very lucky girl to have a young man who cares about her as much as you do. I can see it in your eyes. You're smitten with her, aren't you? Naruto nodded, a rosy blush brightening his face up. Yeah, I'm really lucky to have her. And hopefully, he'd be lucky enough to heal the rift that had come between them. A few days later, Naruto and his team were sitting around a table in a hotel room in a town closer to the Crimson Hand, busy with the final preparations for their attack. The map they were using was in front of them and a few additions had been made to it. Arrows pointing to and away from camps, with numbers written next to them indicating the amount of reinforcements each camp would send to a camp under attack. As expected, the camps were heavily fortified and used competent tactics to ensure their protection, explaining how they were able to skirt the borders of other nations without suffering heavy amounts of casualties. Naruto was surprised to find out that the main camp would not only send reinforcements to the camp they attacked, the smallest camp in this case, but also send a platoon to check on and reinforce the remaining camp. On one of these raids, Naruto had nearly been caught after he got too close to a group of bandits he was planning to escape from. One of the ninja caught wind of his movements and had moved towards him, his group following close behind. He had realized his mistake immediately, but instead of panicking, he decided to roll with it and turn the situation into an advantage. Yugao had been hiding in the trees, watching over Naruto in case he got himself into trouble. She was about to step in, but after he disappeared from view with a quickly cast illusion, she proceeded to follow his lead. The group of bandits entered the clearing where Naruto had been and the ninja, a plain-looking brown-haired man, looked around carefully. Just after one of the bandits complained about being led around on a wild goose chase, Naruto reappeared behind them, gaining their attention and forcing them to chase him. Yugao stayed her hand, wanting to see what Naruto was going to do. Other than the ninja, who had scanned the area before giving chase, the bandits took the bait immediately. Meanwhile, Naruto ran to Yugao's position, explained that the bandits were chasing his clone, and made their escape almost immediately after. It had accomplished a few things. For one, the bandits only paid attention to Naruto, not Yugao. They only seemed to assume that Naruto was only skilled at making clones and was alone. Naruto's decision to run instead of fight had helped them avoid a drawn-out fight that would have rapidly escalated before they were ready. They would engage on their terms, not on the bandits' terms. So, any questions before we head out? Naruto asked. His team shook their heads. Good, let's get going. Kurenai stood up first, but Naruto didn't see her send him a look of concern before she left. Enko left soon after, not even giving Naruto one last jab. Naruto looked at the map one last time before rolling it up. His hands were shaking and a nervous sweat had broke out on his skin. He felt Yugao's hand clasp his shoulder softly and turned to face her. You're worried, aren't you? She asked with a gentle smile on her face. I know what it feels like, but just focus on the mission ahead. If all goes well, we should be back in the Leaf Village before morning. If it doesn't, she pointed at the radio headset in her ear, headsets that they all had, we can try again some other time. Naruto breathed in deeply, exhaling soon after. Yeah, I know, I'm just worried about them, you know. They can take care of themselves, Yugao said. Trust them to do their job. He was nervous, but he put in too much work to back out now, and a part of him was excited to see his plan unfold for real. Like Yugao said, he would just have to trust that Kurenai and Anko, who had both been ninja for longer than he was alive, could do a mission like this without dying. He stood up. I'm ready. The plan was simple. Kurenai would attack the smallest camp by herself, drawing out reinforcements from the main camp. At first, Naruto planned to attack the middle camp, because it was closer to the main camp and the terrain it was on being easier to navigate through. But after learning that the main camp would send more bandits to the smallest camp instead, they changed plans. After the smallest camp was attacked, Anko would attack the medium-sized camp, drawing more bandits from the main camp. In total, they would deplete a third of the main camp's forces, making their job easier. Once Naruto and Yugao reached the main camp, they took their positions and waited for the messenger to arrive, with Naruto creating a few clones who subsequently disappeared into the forest to wait for their signal. Naruto worried that the messengers from the camps that were being attacked would trigger the traps he had set too early, but Anko had convinced them that her summons, snakes, would guide the messengers around the traps. Soon enough, the messenger rushed towards the camp unharmed, just as Anko said he would. The Ogama camp is under attack, he said once he reached the two bandits standing guard in front of the camp's entrance. Naruto wasn't sure why there weren't more, but in the end, it meant less work for him. The guards exchanged a glance before drawing out the swords at their hips. One of them pointed the sword at the messenger. What's the password? The messenger shook his head and took a moment to regain his bearings. The fire is more profitable than the lightning, but the lightning is slower to strike. The guards sheathed their swords and let the messenger through. Naruto and Yugao shared a nod, knowing that since Ogama was the village closest to the Crimson Hand's smallest camp, Kurenai had already done her part. It didn't take long for a large group of bandits to run out of the camp, clad in disheveled clothing and wielding weapons of all kinds. The messenger from the other camp followed the lead of the other one, arriving, saying a different password and leaving along with the reinforcements. Once they couldn't see, hear or sense them, Naruto loosened his hands and went through hand seals. The guard on the left blinked rapidly, and once he looked at his fellow bandit, he drew out his sword and screamed, "I'll kill you." The other guard was too shocked to defend himself as the enraged guard slashed and stabbed, carving deep gouges on the victim's skin before cleaving his head off, ignoring the spray of blood that had covered his head and shoulders as he continued to hack at the deceased guard. The guard's fellow bandits soon approached him after hearing the guard's furious bellow, but that wasn't the greatest decision as the guard looked at them and adopted the same manic expression he had when hacking at the former member of the Crimson Hand. He charged at the nearest bandit, who was able to block his initial strike, but was overpowered by the guard's sheer ferocity and quickly succumbed to the same fate his predecessor suffered. Before he could attack yet another bandit, the outraged guard was stabbed by all the other bandits in the immediate vicinity and dropped to the ground lifelessly. They looked around frantically, confused as to why the guard suddenly snapped, but then their eyes shot wide in abject fear and they ran deeper into the camp, shouting about demons and foxes. The genjutsu he had used were a success. The one he used on the guard was designed to make him see his partner kiss someone he found desirable, playing on his memories and stirring up his rage. Then, Naruto layered another genjutsu that was inspired by the rage and bloodlust he felt whenever he tapped into the Nine Tails chakra. It did the trick and sent the guard into a frenzy. He wasn't expecting it to work as well as it did, but he wouldn't complain about the results being better than he anticipated. The other genjutsu he used on the group of bandits created the image of predatory foxes not unlike the Nine Tails, shrouded in an orange fog with menacing red eyes, fangs and claws as real and sharp as the greatest pain they ever felt. While some of the fleeing bandits managed to run far enough, the rest weren't so lucky as 4 of Naruto's clones shimmered into life right in front of them. Hands flashed through seals and 4 gales of cutting wind sliced through the bandits and took them off their feet, forcing them to lie in rapidly forming pools of blood. He gave Yugao the signal and they rushed out of their hiding spots, jumping into the fray. Yugao took on a group of bandits a fair distance away from where Naruto's clones were and went to work, dispatching bandit after bandit with each swing of her katana, barely staying in one spot as she danced like a floating leaf in the wind. That was why she was with him. Her skill combined with her sensory ability would let her come to his aid in case he needed it. Naruto and his clones faced the oncoming force of bandits and stood their ground. The clones managed to split the force apart, enough that only a quarter of the bandits remained to fight the real deal. The largest bandit smiled at Naruto and showed his surprisingly white teeth before running towards him, brandishing an axe. He pulled out a kunai and met the bandit's charge head-on, moving his shoulder out of the way and executing a well-timed leg sweep to send the large man toppling on the ground, flicking his wrist to bury the kunai deep within the bandit's throat. He only spared a glance at the man as whatever life force he had faded entirely before drawing out a handful of shuriken and flinging them at the approaching horde. The ones that weren't stopped in their tracks continued to run at him and he got to work, focusing entirely on attacking without thinking about how many lives he would, and was, ending. He stepped out of the way of slashes, bent around stabs and twisted around grapples and lashed out with bone-breaking kicks targeting the ribs or kneecaps. Kunai stabs that hit arteries or vital organs are tricking them with strategically timed illusions to slip out of view and have the bandits target each other, accidentally or otherwise. More bandits came to take the place of their fallen comrades and Naruto continued to fight, blowing out a wind that was scythe-like in its shape and cut through the entire force in a shower of blood and dirt. That was the advantage of wind-style ninjutsu. It was difficult to detect without a chakra-sensing technique, with the only indications of it otherwise being the distortion in the air or dirt and grass being flung upwards. The next wave of bandits fought smarter, taking advantage of Naruto's momentary distraction from having his clone's memories returning to him to surround him. He ducked and waited for the bandits to retract their weapons before jumping upwards and away from any bandits. Just before he could touch the ground, a spear flew his way and he avoided it with a quick substitution jutsu, repaying the bandit by throwing a kunai and impaling his heart. The bandits continued to approach and even as he continued to take them out, the remaining ones managed to force him further and further away from Yugao. One of the bandits brought his hands down in a two-handed smash, which was blocked and countered by Naruto stabbing both of his kunai into him. He then used the bandit's corpse as a shield to block the weapons sent his way. Once he kicked the body forwards, he slapped his hands together and unleashed a gust of crushing wind with the gale palm jutsu. No more bandits came and the memories of all the bandits, all of the people he and his clones killed came back to him. It was necessary, to protect his village and all the people who would be targeted by the Crimson Hand if they were left unchecked, but it still sickened him to kill so many. Their blood seeped into the ground and made the brown a dark red. A foul smell emanated from the bandits' corpses and the moonlight shone on their bodies. He swallowed audibly and breathed out. The mission wasn't over until he had the leader of the Crimson Hand's head. Just then, he felt a chakra signature appear right in front of him. "So, you're the one responsible for all of this," the man said. He was the ninja that Naruto had seen on his nearly botched raid, with slicked back, shoulder-length brown hair and a beard hanging from his chin in the shape of an oval. His dark green wardrobe was similar to most of the bandits' clothing, but had less wear and tear and looked like it was made of better material. He had a smile on his face that was at odds with the current situation, and was practically radiating confidence. "I imagined that Hidden Leaf Ninja would come our way, but to think that they would send one of their most promising genin to kill us." He chuckled, low and foreboding. Naruto moved into a taijutsu stance, waiting for when this ninja would attack. Naruto Uzumaki, the Blade of Illusion. The ninja's chakra, which previously had a nondescript, earthy feel, spiked and killing intent flared. "I should be able to take care of you before your partner finds me. For someone who I've never heard of, she is quite skilled. But I'm getting ahead of myself." The ninja took the weapon strapped to his hip and spun it twice before extending it, revealing it to be a bow staff. "I'm Zokusei Yamasaki, and you won't kill another member of the Crimson Hand after I'm done with you." Chapter 26. Progression. As soon as Zokusei finished speaking, Naruto put his hands together and began to circle around Zokusei, a clone mirroring his movements. For every step Naruto took, a clone would form. Soon enough, Zokusei was surrounded, trapped within a circle of gray and orange. The staff wielder's confident smile didn't slip once and he held his weapon in a defensive stance, waiting for Naruto to attack. He didn't wait for long as one Naruto broke formation and charged, kunai in hand. Zokusei didn't budge and struck Naruto's wrist with a quick jab of his staff, knocking it outwards before delivering a quickly fast strike to Naruto's sternum. He shattered into thousands upon thousands of cherry petals, impeding Zokusei's vision. Naruto's clone was free to dash in and was about to stab Zokusei's kidneys, but met a quick end when Zokusei pivoted on the ball of his foot and swung his staff into the clone's neck, breaking it with a sickening crunch. The smile on Zokusei's face exploded into a full-on grin after Naruto's clone puffed out of existence. "Well, what do you know? You aren't just hype after all." Naruto's eye twitched. All of Zokusei's staff strikes were hard enough to break bone and he was able to counter attacks while under the effects of a debilitating genjutsu. Just then, Zokusei's chakra flow stopped entirely before restarting immediately afterwards, flushing out the chakra Naruto had implanted in his chakra network. Two more clones attacked, but when Zokusei avoided their attacks and destroyed them, they dispersed in clouds of smoke instead of breaking like mirrors. With the illusion broken, Zokusei pounced like a predator who had closed in on his prey and slammed his palms on the ground after finishing a hand-seal combination, impaling all of Naruto's clones with earthen spikes that erupted from below. The real Naruto didn't bother to stick around, making some distance between him and Zokusei. Activating his radio headset, he said, "I've got a code 8. He wasn't certain he could defeat Zokusei, so by telling his teammates that he was in a code 8 situation, Naruto would focus more on slowing down the enemy until Yugao or his other teammates could arrive while doing whatever damage he could. Calling in reinforcements, Zokusei asked, appearing in front of him and thrusting his staff towards Naruto's head. He hit thin air as Naruto ducked and dived to the right towards the nearest clearing, landing in a crouch. He hopped to his feet and kept his hands loose. "Don't bother. Your friend's got her hands full. She won't help you beat me." Zokusei moved in a burst of tremendous speed, catching Naruto off guard and slamming the tip of his staff into Naruto's sternum. He was able to roll with the attack and avoid the worst of the damage, but before he could jump away, Zokusei planted his staff on the ground and used it to vault himself into the air and thrust both his feet towards Naruto's face. Once again, Naruto's reflexes saved him as he blocked the two-footed stomp with his forearms and winced, feeling his bones begin to crack before being pushed away by the sheer force of the attack. He used chakra to stick to the ground and focused. 3 clones were made and approached Zokusei one by one. The first clone was struck in the side after Zokusei swung his staff like a bat, but the second clone leapfrogged off the first one and brought his leg back for a powerful kick, but Zokusei grinned and let one hand go from his staff, meeting the clone head-on and striking it with the back of his hand. Returning to a two-handed staff grip, he aimed an overhead blow at the third clone. The clone blocked it with one hand, locking eyes with it as its mouth shifted into a cruel smirk. His staff began to eat itself as a caustic red chakra enveloped it and turned his skin black once it made contact. Zokusei bit his tongue to dispel the illusion, but the damage was done as the real Naruto maneuvered around the ninja and aimed for his heart once he touched the ground. Zokusei just barely avoided death by relying on his battle-honed instincts and bending towards the attack, only having his skin along his shoulders scraped and immediately drawing blood. In response, Zokusei punched Naruto hard, sending the genjutsu specialist flying towards a nearby tent. Once he landed and crushed the tent with his body, he coughed out blood and groaned. He felt aches and pains all over his body, especially around his face. Zokusei was stronger, faster and more experienced than he was, skilled at both taijutsu and with both the bow staff and just barely affected by his genjutsu. The last time he fought someone like Zokusei was when he fought Orochimaru. At least during this fight he knew he stood a chance of holding out, instead of being toyed with by someone who could easily kill him without batting an eyelash. "You cut me," Zokusei said soon after coming to him. Naruto had sprung up beforehand and jumped as high as he could, landing as far away from Zokusei as possible. But it wasn't enough, as the staff wielder found him almost immediately. "You managed make me bleed." A low chuckle escaped from his lips as he did a set of hand seals. His skin adopted a gray sheen, earth chakra gathering itself and spreading throughout his body. That won't be happening again. One moment he was a few meters away, the next he was right in front of him and hammering Naruto's stomach with a knee strike, before lifting his knee and striking Naruto's chin. Naruto staggered back, seeing stars before Zokusei punched his nose and sent him tumbling down along the ground. Blood gushed from Naruto's nose and he spat out spit infused with blood, accidentally cutting his tongue after almost having his chin broken. He wasn't sure how or why his chin wasn't broken, since Zokusei's attacks were much harder than before. It took him more time to get to his feet, stumbling slightly once he did. Immediately after gaining his bearings, two jaws made of stone, dirt and grass closed in on his position in a pincer attack. Once the jaws made contact, they merged together and shredded the target caught within their sharp teeth-like edges. Light shone from a crevice made from the jaws' unification and blinded Zokusei, while Naruto went in for the kill. Once again, Zokusei didn't seem to be affected and whipped his staff out, catching Naruto in the side. Naruto skidded along the ground and hopped to his feet, fighting past the burning pain his back had endured and ignoring the stinging sensation pulsing around his ribs. He unleashed a gale of cutting wind blades towards Zokusei, but the staff wielder only created a wall of earth to keep the wind from hurting him. When the wall went down, Zokusei held out his forearm, expecting to block the incoming kunai. But when it buried itself handle deep into his skin, he grinned as he broke the illusion. He was positively ecstatic at finding a worthy opponent who was so young, who had so much potential. He tapped the ground with his foot once before setting off, looking forward to ending the fight. Meanwhile, Naruto had used the distraction to escape, running as far away as he could from Zokusei, towards where Yugao might have been. The sounds of fighting had petered out not too long ago, so there weren't many reasons he could think of for why Yugao hadn't come to him. Even so, retreating when he had the chance should have been the first thing he did once it became painfully obvious that he wasn't going to gain a victory, or even seriously damage the rogue ninja. He knew he had to improve, he knew that underestimating his opponent was a recipe for disaster. The worst thing about the entire fight was that there were moments where he could have won the fight, but Zokusei managed to counter or dampen the impact of each and every move he made. If only he could summon Yugao. Naruto groaned and buried his face in his hands. He could have summoned an entire army of battle toads to fight for him, and he completely forgot about them. What kind of idiot forgot about his trump card, the ace up his sleeve? He was that idiot. And to compound on Naruto's cursed luck, Zokusei had managed to track him down. Why bother running away? He asked, that sadistic half-smile etched on his face. He wasn't wreathed in earth chakra like he was earlier on. Like I said, your friend isn't going to bail you out. Naruto gritted his teeth. How did you find me? Zokusei cocked his head to the side. Might as well tell you. I can sense chakra by kicking the ground. By doing that, I send out a sonar pulse that detects all chakra signatures within a half-kilometer of my current location. As long as they're touching something connected to the ground, I can find them. He hefted his bow staff and twirled it once, relishing the shocked look on Naruto's face. Doesn't matter anyway, because how I can find you is the least of your worries. Before Naruto could react, the staff struck his shoulder. He wasted no time in jumping away. Once he touched ground, he began to tap into the well of infinite chakra coursing within him. But he wasn't able to draw upon any of the nine-tailed fox's chakra at all. Help me, you stupid fox. Do you want to die too? The nine tails didn't respond, and Zokusei took advantage of Naruto's lapse in concentration by driving his staff into Naruto's diaphragm, knocking the air out of him. Another sweeping movement knocked Naruto off his feet. He looked up at Zokusei, desperate to do anything to survive. All he could see as his vision began to fade was his enemy bathed in the moonlight, darkening his features until they became pitch black. The first thing Naruto saw was white. A white ceiling, white walls, white sheets. The only thing that wasn't white was the chair placed next to his bed. He wondered if he was dead, because he felt really good. All the aches and pains he had accumulated were gone. There wasn't a broken bone in his body, and when he sat himself up on his bed, he wasn't dizzy. You're awake, the nine tails said in a low rumble. Naruto knew then that he was alive. There wasn't any reason for the nine tails to join in him death. Why didn't you help me? What happened to all that? If I die, you die too, crap you went on about. The nine tails merely bared its teeth in a frightening smile. He wasn't going to kill you. And how do you know that for sure? He fought you but never went in for the kill. He was toying with you, testing your limits. The Nine-Tails rested its chin on its hands and yawned. For someone like him, his desire is to fight the strongest ninja, or those who have the potential to become strong and emerge as the victor. Yeah, but why didn't you help me beat him? He wouldn't have killed you, so it would have been easier to submit instead of delaying the inevitable. If I was certain that you two would never meet again, I would have helped you kill him. Naruto breathed in deeply, breathing out soon after. The fact that the Nine-Tails could keep him from accessing its chakra when he needed it was distressing news. He knew that the Nine-Tails wasn't obligated to help him out beyond keeping him from dying, but from the way it gave him the push he needed to become Kurenai's boyfriend and all the other help it gave him, he thought that the Nine-Tails had his back unconditionally. It did, but in a roundabout, almost nebulous way, and it was clear that it helped him out of its own self-interest. Naruto looked at the curtains, which were white, of course, and saw light peeking through the cracks. The clock on the wall told him that it was getting close to lunchtime, and he heard the hustle and bustle hasty movement often brought outside his room. Quietly slipping out of his bed, he discarded the green hospital gown he had been wearing and put on his clothing, which was graciously sorted in a pile on the chair next to him. Once he was finished dressing up, he did a once-over to make sure that everything was in place and in tip-top shape. Seeing the bracelet Shikamaru had given him on his arm made him jolt in surprise, memories flooding his mind. Just before he put on his ninja sandals, he pulled out a scroll that he had sealed in the sole of his right sandal. Unsealing that scroll, he pulled out the box containing Kurenai's gift and sighed in relief, grateful that it had survived the mission. Once he returned the box to its scroll, he thought about what to do next. The first thing he would do was go home and freshen up, before finding Kurenai and asking her about what happened during the mission after he lost consciousness. But before he could do that, he had to leave the hospital. He could have escaped through the window, but it would have been too much hassle if he got caught. So he called the nurse. Naruto had reached his apartment after having been cleared to leave by the nurse and receiving confirmation that he was in perfect health. Pulling his keys from a blood seal he made next to his door, he went inside and took off his sandals, placing them on the side. The first thing he noticed was the distinct smell of bleach and other cleaning supplies wafting in the air. Odd, Naruto thought. He hadn't cleaned his apartment in nearly 2 months. He checked the living room and saw that the pages he wrote his plans for new illusions on or sketched different images he'd use to distract or compel his opponents weren't scattered all over the place. Instead they were gathered in a neat stack on the corner of his table. His kitchen was clean too. Plates and cutlery were cleaned and organized in their proper places, stray ramen cups were disposed of and his kitchen table and sink were polished to a shine. Same went with the bathroom and his closet. Everything was clean and in its rightful place. It made him wonder about the person who had so much compassion and concern for him that he or she would clean his house for him without being asked to. And when he entered his room, he got his answer. It was Kurenai who had taken his haphazardly placed clothing and folded them before putting them in his closet. It was Kurenai who had taken the time to do this for him. It was pretty obvious once he thought about it. His girlfriend was currently sleeping on his bed, a dim light illuminating her skin. One arm covered her stomach while she laid her head over her other arm, her hand resting on her hair. Her eyes were scrunched up slightly and her lips were pulled into an adorable pout. It was easily the cutest expression he had ever seen on her face. She wasn't occupying the whole bed, so he sat on the edge of the mattress and lay his back against the headboard. He didn't want to wake Kurenai up and disrupt her peaceful slumber, so he let his mind wander. He never wanted to hurt Kurenai, focusing more on completing the mission so that he could deal with the issue they were facing in their relationship. He wanted so desperately for things to return to normal between him and his girlfriend. For the past 3 months, Kurenai had been a teacher who helped him reach the potential he had and cultivated the inspiration he had been given for genjutsu into something legitimate, a friend who had accepted him unconditionally and supported him in everything he did and even a romantic partner who he was able to be intimate with in spite of their age difference. He couldn't imagine his life without Kurenai being in it the way she was. Kurenai stirred next to him, moving to a kneeling position and covering her mouth to stifle a yawn. Then she made eye contact and Naruto was almost startled by the sheer intensity in her searching gaze as she moved towards him like a predator on the prowl. One hand lashed out and struck the wall behind him, while the other was placed on the bed, next to Naruto's side. "Kurenai, Naruto said, slightly intimidated at how ravenous Kurenai's expression was, how her eyes glowed in the dim light of the room and how rigid her body was. He had no clue what Kurenai wanted to do, or what she wanted to say until she descended, mashing her lips against his. Shock from how fiercely Kurenai was kissing him faded rapidly, making way for sheer desire, and he moved his arms towards Kurenai's neck to deepen the kiss. Before he could, Kurenai grabbed his arms by the elbows and pinned them against the headboard, inadvertently doing what he wanted to do for him. The next few moments were a haze as Naruto's senses went haywire, intoxicated by Kurenai's fragrant smell, her firm yet gentle touch and the taste of her tongue roaming around his mouth. When he felt the toe-curling pressure Kurenai made during their kiss disappear, his eyes shot wide open and he took in a shuddering breath. His eyes wandered around, before locking on Kurenai's form, seeing her ear pressed against his chest and feeling his heartbeat. Kurenai met his gaze. Her stare was much softer, but she was frowning. Her hair was mussed, standing out in places. "I want you to promise me that you won't throw your life away ever again." Was that why Kurenai had acted so strangely earlier on? This was the first time that she had kissed him on the lips. "But I didn't try. Promise me," Kurenai hissed, a hint of desperation creeping into her voice. Naruto remembered how she had reacted when her friend had died, the amount of pain she had suffered through. He never intended to hurt her like that. And he wasn't intending to die anytime soon. "I promise." Kurenai gave him the warmest smile he had ever seen, which smoothed out the stress lines that had been etched on her face. "Thank you." She lay her head on Naruto's chest again and closed her eyes, listening to his heartbeat once more. On a whim, Naruto ran his hands through Kurenai's hair and was about to pull his hand away in case he was irritating his girlfriend, but the approving purr he heard from her stopped that thought in its tracks. He had wanted to straighten her hair and marveled at its texture, its softness. He had no way of knowing how much time had passed, but he had a feeling that whatever he had to do could wait. His hand had wandered down Kurenai's back, and when his hand slipped to his side to avoid groping her rear, he brushed over the scroll containing her present. "Why did you clean up my apartment?" he asked her. She hadn't moved much, seemingly glued to him. "I knew that you would come here as soon as you were allowed to leave the hospital. I waited longer than I thought I would, so I decided to clean up what I could to pass the time." Naruto smiled in gratitude. "Thanks, Kurenai. Oh, I got you something to cheer you up." Kurenai sat up on her knees, using the arm that had wrapped itself around Naruto's waist to keep steady. "What is it?" He pulled out the scroll and unsealed it, handing the box to her. "I know you were irritated and stressed out during the mission, and I know that you don't have a lot of jewelry, so I got this for you. Hope you like it." Kurenai took the bracelet out of the box and examined it. Her name was written in an elaborate, flowery script, and the ruby and citrine gemstones complemented the bracelet. The ruby appeared to be a part of the petals engraved onto the bracelet, while the citrine seemed to make the ruby shine brighter, like the sun shining on a flower. She put it on easily and flicked her wrist. "It's beautiful, Naruto. Thank you so much for giving this to me." Naruto beamed. "I'm glad you like it." Kurenai nodded and turned away, covering her eyes with her hand. Naruto flinched in alarm, seeing tears roll down her cheeks. "What's wrong? Why are you crying?" She tried to breathe in, but let out a hiccup instead. Naruto was at her side immediately and rubbed her back, trying to comfort her even though he didn't know what set her off. Eventually, Kurenai stopped crying and wiped her face. Naruto helped, removing an errant tear from Kurenai's cheek with his thumb. "Can you forgive me for how I treated you?" Kurenai asked him. "Yeah, of course," Naruto said with a tender smile. "But why were you crying?" "I let my emotions get the better of me," she said, eyes still watery and bloodshot. "I got angry at the way that Yugito woman kissed you, and instead of behaving like an adult and accepting that it happened and moving on from it, I took out all the stress and irritation I was going through on you, when you didn't do anything to deserve it." "But it was just a goodbye kiss, wasn't it?" Kurenai shook her head. "Not to me." Naruto frowned, confused at trying to understand Kurenai being annoyed at something that shouldn't have been an issue. "Can you explain?" Kurenai breathed in deep, rubbing her eyes clean as she did. Women are often territorial about their men. When they get angry for any reason, whether it's because their man gets kissed by some hussy or something different, they expect their man to figure out the problem without anyone telling them what the problem is. But it was my mistake in blaming you when you didn't know that. Naruto blinked, trying to process the information and rationalize it. He failed. That doesn't make any sense. If I mess up somewhere and I want to fix my mistake, how can I do it if I don't know what's wrong? I'm not a Yamanaka. Kurenai's lips curled upwards into something resembling a smile, except it had nothing resembling the usual traits a smile had, like warmth or joy. That's just the way things are. Naruto sighed in frustration. You know what, that's fine. Then he smiled. I'm really glad that things can return to normal between us. Kurenai returned his smile with of her own. An actual one, this time. I'm happy about that as well. She looked at the window before standing up and stretching. Want to go and get some lunch? I'm sure you haven't eaten in a while. Naruto stood up as well. You're right. How long was I out? You were only unconscious for a couple of days, she said. She pursed her lips. Let's get going. Lunch had been a quiet affair. Kurenai had insisted on maintaining the charade that they weren't dating, so she left first and went to the restaurant they chose earlier on, meeting up with him once he made it there, moving from a different direction. Sometimes, Naruto wondered what the point of jumping through so many hoops was. He respected Kurenai's decision but hoped that they could show off their relationship in the near future. After finishing an enjoyable lunch together, Naruto and Kurenai went to the Hokage's office and checked in. Anko was sitting on a chair against the wall, while Yugao was in her Anbu uniform complete with cat mask, standing on the side. Kurenai had told him during lunch that she sent a message to the Hokage saying that they would come as soon as they were finished eating, which explained why Anko and Yugao were there. It was a good thing too, Naruto thought. They knew what happened after he was knocked out and he really wanted to know if the mission was a success. The Hokage looked at him and smiled, folding his hands in front of him and placing them on his desk. Naruto, thank you for coming. Naruto nodded, noticing that Anko had stood up and joined them. Since your teammates have already given their mission reports, I want you to give me a verbal report about your actions during the mission. Naruto did, giving a detailed report about how he planned the attack on the Crimson Hand and how it went down. But what happened after I was knocked out? May I answer, Lord Hokage? Yugao asked. The Hokage gave her the go-ahead. I apprehended Zokusei after he had defeated you. I would have arrived earlier, but he had planned to separate us for as long as possible and I had to deal with a larger force of the Crimson Hand's bandits than what we had anticipated. I had considered chasing after him after he made his escape, but your survival was a priority and I chose to heal you first before continuing the mission. Naruto nodded. An odd thing he noted about Yugao was how whenever she detailed strategies or reporting her actions, she took on a professional, concise attitude. If he ever joined Anbu, would he adopt the same sort of habits? Kakashi hadn't, but then he had the veneer of someone who lived and breathed lazy and aloof. Thanks for doing that, really. I'm only glad that you recovered so quickly, she said. The Hokage was smiling as well. Also, as the Crimson Hand is no more and the leader's head was delivered to us, you have officially succeeded on your mission. All three of your teammates have stated that you performed admirably during the mission. Really? Naruto looked at Anko, who winked at him. All the praise she had given him was either half-assed or the grudging type. That she had thought he did well was a surprise. Yes, the Hokage said. Now, I have an announcement to make. Naruto Uzumaki. Due to the completion of the mission being solid proof for your abilities as a squad leader and your performance during the Chunin exams and the village's invasion, in addition to the Lord of the Land of Fire's recommendation upon finishing the mission he assigned you, you have been promoted to the rank of Chunin. Congratulations. Naruto beamed and put on the green Chunin flak jacket he received from the Hokage, taking a scroll containing valuable identification papers and other information pertaining to his promotion as well. Thanks a lot, Lord Hokage. The Hokage smiled as well, a genuine, proud smile. You deserve it. Remember that while your privileges have increased, so have your responsibilities. Do not forget this and continue to give excellent service to the village hidden in the leaves. Pride from his accomplishment bloomed within him. He was the first member of the graduating Team 7 to be promoted, and was promoted ahead of several other genin in his graduating class and beyond. By claiming the vest, he had fulfilled one of his goals and was that much closer to becoming the village's strongest ninja and making people see how glorious genjutsu was. He knew for a fact that more accomplishments like these would come as long as he worked hard and didn't rest on his laurels, or rely too much on the nine-tailed fox's power. All in all, for someone who was the dead last of the academy only 4 months before, being the Hidden Leaf Village's newest shunin was pretty damn great. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.